to finalize this out, wrap it up, you have another one to talk about, Katie.
Yes. And it was a study group, and correct me if I'm wrong, but study groups are not really scientific. They're more of just kind of an open discussion to talk about the subject at hand with a whole bunch of, in this case, rheumatologists. And it was about mental health in pediatric rheumatology. And it covered like a lot of different things. And I found it kind of really fascinating to be a fly on the wall and be able to watch the recording. And they said, I've got a couple of different bullet points here, that even in pediatric cases, their mental health disorders are still relevant, are still something to be aware of. And that among other things, it can cause adherence issues. And we talked about this previously as far as the different causes and factors to make sure that your patients are adherent. And I think that's probably a big, factor. If patients are anxious or they don't understand or they're depressed or something else is going on, it can create a lot of different issues with taking their medicines and then, getting even worse instead of better, and can kind of cascade. I found it interesting. They were talking about screening their patients for mental health issues. And a few were mentioning how they don't feel like they had enough training as a rheumatologist to deal with mental health issues. And that kind of made them hesitant to get into it, because then they have a sense of obligation to follow up and follow through when even the patient might not follow up or follow through. I think someone gave an example. They referred someone, within the same building. Like right now, I just made you an appointment, just walk across the, the hallway to this place, and they didn't follow through on that, which was, for them a bit heartbreaking, because, just so simple, but they didn't do that.
One thing that actually jumps out to me is you have an appointment time and what you're thinking of, and you may have to get back to class or something like that, to where you can't just go across the hall. I mean, to schedule that appointment, seeing, that they may think it's simple, but people don't carve that amount of time. And they have to get back, or the parent has to get back to work or something like that, or the child has a test at 1 o'clock. And
so many other just life factors. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. And like what you brought up earlier kind of goes back to what we discussed yesterday in adherence, and just the barriers for kids. They want to be normal. They don't want to stand out to their peers. So they may not be following through with things as much, and they hold it in. Interesting.
And that was something that they talked about too, as far as kind of like standing out, especially I found it interesting. It's an invisible illness, but making it visible. The example they gave was with COVID, and a case where one of the patients really needed to wear a mask, and then they went to school and they were asking other people to wear a mask, and how political and dramatic that became. And it basically almost created, a target on their back, because they were the ones leading, this, issue. And the rheumatologist said, maybe we're making our patients a bit too fragile. Maybe we're stressing them out too much, and they're taking maybe too many precautions when maybe they don't have to. So I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective.
Yeah,
like a rheumatologist almost suggesting not to wear a mask. I'm like, and again, this was not any kind of, recommendation or anything like that, just a discussion, but how that came up and the reasonings and rationales behind it. And then something as far as, with telehealth too, I've seen this come up as far as, are the parents in the room? Asking, the patients to sweep the room with their camera to see who else is in the room. And if it's easier to have a parent or a caregiver with them, or make sure that they're not with them, to have, maybe the harder questions or mental health screenings. So that another part of the conversation that was fascinating. And then a couple other things. It was brought up recommending the pediatric patient to volunteer. And I thought that was interesting because I know I love volunteering, but if I was given that, I'd think, well, I can't, I don't have a car. I can't just, go out. I can't commit to anything. I might not feel well because my mind goes to, physical labor. But that it also, from their point of view, can be not preventing that isolation that patients can feel. So kind of coming from a good place, but it should have maybe a more thorough conversation as far as where to and how to. And then the online support groups.
I find what you just brought up as far as a sweep of the room with telehealth, because so many parents, again, parents notice things that some kids may not. So an aside question can be directed at the parent, but when you have a parent that's answering 100% for their children, when the question's being asked of the child, that's interesting, in that perspective alone. Or what is the parent overreacting or underreacting, or versus exactly what the kid feels like.
And I see it both ways, because I agree with you how parents can see things that you don't. Like my mom would point out things that I didn't realize I was flaring as badly until she mentioned it. But also, like, not having someone in the room to have a more open conversation, or is it more comforting? So it's kind of, you have to, I imagine that's very hard for a rheumatologist to kind of suss that out, what's better. And then I think I heard a recommendation of start off with someone in the room and then kick them out, and have that as like a ground rule to go in with.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a good balance. And then they touched on like social media and support groups. And it's good for you as a rheumatologist, because that was their audience, to know what's out there and what they can recommend, but also give a warning. Give them maybe a little bit of education as far as how do you support groups in a good way, because I know some support groups can be, I don't want to say toxic per se, but they can be unhelpful. Bullying or giving bad advice. I think it's, instead of Dr. Google, it's like Dr. Facebook, and how that can be much worse in some cases. So to make sure, because I don't know kids these days, what they're being taught as far as knowledge online. And if you're just getting diagnosed, you don't necessarily know where to go, but seeing other people is very comforting. But what are those other people saying? So I thought that was kind of a very good thing, talk to them about what's good information, what's bad, when to use a support group, when to reach out to them, who to reach out to, when. So, and then they ended it with transitioning from a pediatric to an adult rheumatologist. And I think we've talked about this a couple times. And I think it was kind of, figured out what that patient needs. If they're in a good state, wait till they're done with college, because they might be moving. And at that time, they can find another rheumatologist wherever they're moving. And then just kind of make it normalize that they do have a future, normalize that they will go to college, that they will have a career, and kind of give them that hope and that, like, expectation of you're going to get better, not, all the stress and side effects and medications, but kind of the hopeful, like, plan for your life, because you're going to get one, kind of a hopeful bet. So I thought that was a good way to end it.
Yeah. Well, when you were talking about the social media, I was actually thinking about, as far as, going back and when I was, younger, all those decades ago. And, even though bullying may not be as prevalent as it was when we were younger, in respects that everybody got bullied. It was the norm back then, where there's more awareness now. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It's just, it's not an everyday to everyone type of thing. I think that it was decades ago. And saying that, I think something that hasn't changed much is peer pressure and wanting to follow a crowd or be cool or feel included. I think there might be more acceptance of being an individual and being yourself, which is fantastic. but I also think that there is just this acceptance that happens when you're younger, that you want to fit in. And I think we've seen it with adults who are just terrible to each other in this world of COVID. And you know, because you were kind of talking about that with the masks and, you know, that kind of thing. I could see really, encouraging patients, if there are social media groups that a juvenile child is in specifically to support this. I would, if we see it in adults, we're going to see it in the kids too. That, you know, there are adults living with our diseases that are very anti-vaccination, whatever, and often juvenile patients will follow the lead of the thought process of the parent. And so, you know, all of that needs to be considered and factored in. So, you know, I'm not a therapist. I'm just offering some advice based on observation and, you know, just general knowledge of kids and personal knowledge of running an organization where we have many support groups. Granted, they are more on adult platforms, but the fact of the matter is that it's just a time where people have very strong differing opinions, and that's going to translate into the juvenile world as well. And there's a lot of things that we don't know what the influences are coming from. And so I would encourage the open communication as much as possible about what's happening in those support groups, if at all possible. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Maybe like understand which ones to recommend, which ones are good ones.
Well, that's a
maybe
tough
have
one
moderators
in itself, because you know, kids are going to
change and
click
evolve
and decide what they want. So it's an interest in saying interesting. Yeah, that's a good topic, I think, to put out there into the juvenile arthritis and juvenile family community. What, if any, support groups online are there for juveniles? I mean, are they specifically through organizations, or are they really on social media?
And their caregivers. And because I know in a different session, I think they were talking about like social support and, you know, moms learning from other moms how they're, you know, handling the process, handling, you know, the diagnosis journey and all that. So
I know that there's some friends that I know that they have kids with a form of JIA, and they've actually created some of their own Facebook groups. Yeah, Facebook groups to where kids, and again, it's this mom is in the room, but letting the conversation happen and interjecting when she feels it's appropriate to interject. But then that again is still flawed in its own way, because again, you just to be protected and things like that, and make sure your kids who are tuning in are protected. And again, you're still using the values of this kid and the mom. So I mean, that's still the structure.
I just can't express it enough how I've personally seen as a leader of an organization and being in these support groups and hosting some of our own. It's just, I've never seen it so inflammatory, pardon the pun. I've just never seen a time where there's just the potential for people to just be flat out mean.
Right.
And
different opinions. Yeah. The different opinions.
It's opinions that are hard. It's like, it's almost like don't talk about, you know, politics or religion. I feel like it's politics, religion, and COVID. I just feel like there's a new because people are, and the reason it's hard to talk about the other things because people have very ingrained perspectives and beliefs that will never alter. That is their belief, and it will always be their belief. And that is sort of where we fall with COVID. And I don't really know where the kids lie. I can only tell you from the little bit of experience I have, and they're not JIA, you know, kids. There are other kids that I know with the mental struggles of just solitude and, you know.
I know it, my own 22-year-old. I mean, I've got his experiences and the same thing, you know. I kind of locked him down when he got sent home from college. I kind of locked him down and wasn't letting him see friends and things like that. Because again, my fear of him bringing it home, but I kind of lessened with that. And we came to a, what we did in our house was when he got home, he stripped down, threw all of his clothes into the washing machine and showered. And then, life carried on in our house. But I mean, it was the lack of knowledge, I think. And even research at that point, because it was so new. So I know I did him an injustice, but what
it was the best advice at the time. So
right. So yeah, I did what I could, and went from my own avenues. But you're right, it is it is added to. No, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, and don't talk about COVID, because again,
unless you can in all three have the ability to listen and respect others' opinions. Otherwise it goes nowhere.
Right.
The conversation just goes nowhere.
Or get fast. Inflammatory fast. Yeah. Like you had mentioned. So, exactly.
Right. So I think we have covered everything and then some. Yeah. So I'm apologizing ahead of time to Bridget, who is our assistant, who does the initial segmenting on this, and then Ryan, our producer, one of our producers, who then is going to take this and cut it into other segments. This is going to be a tough one because we have, I think, a lot of segments inside of segments on this one.
I know, and we keep going this way and that way and then back that way.
So sorry guys, I'm going to apologize to you right now. Okay, but this is our final group debrief from ACR 2021 Convergence. This is our final leg of a pilot project we worked on the last 2 years of Go With Us to Conferences, which is designed for us, people living with the diseases, running our organization, to enhance our mission, which is to invite all other patients to have a voice as an equal at the table, to be able to have these experiences with us, go with us, learn what we learn. So check that out at aiarthritis.org/conferences. We will be going to EULAR 2022 next. That will be in June 2022, and then again ACR at the end of 2022. So make sure that you come along with us, because the experience is, I think, rewarding, and it is your opportunity to learn with us, but also to really ask questions and find out more about your disease and ways to improve living with it. So anything else you all want to add?
No, just we look forward to carrying on these conversations and continuing these conversations. If something is something on your mind, please email us or reach out to us on the this platform too, just so we know what you're thinking about.
Absolutely. Yes. So definitely you can comment in the YouTube comments, but you also can message us on any of our social media platforms at IF AI Arthritis, or email us at info@aiarthritis.org. Just put whatever the topic is in the subject line. Well, that's it. We are out.
Great.
I disappeared.
Yeah, my hand did too. Sorry. Bye, everybody.
All right, signing out from ACR 2021.